So today,
I can see your Walmart to go order there. So no,
oh,
just
good.
kidding.
Knew I was looking for something there. But we're going to basically go through how the PL series speakers are applied in Q-SYS. We have seen some applications that may be questionable if you haven't done a lot with applying speakers in the Q-SYS Designer, something more than just a ceiling speaker or so. So I'm Trip Matthews. I'm a senior solutions architect with our business development team, basically supporting our hospitality and entertainment division. Although, as you know, all of us QSYS support guys support everybody, so we're a big team. So let's get started with this. Today we're going to look at the CA model, which is our coax or line array, our coax array, the DC, which is directivity control, and then the LA, the line array series. And the first thing that we want to start with is you may or may not want to change these boxes from their factory submission to you in passive mode, but you may want to go to buy-up mode. They offer this option. And as you can see here, this is just kind of a cut out of the manual. It's probably not easy to see as well, so we're going to switch over and show it. But basically, you would remove the 6 screws on the connector panel. And if you look in the upper right or right in the center section, there's actually a little tab that will show you what mode you're in. And you're changing the connector that goes to that. So in real life, I'm going to switch over to a camera to show us that. So we'll go over here now and we should be looking at the speaker. Is everybody seeing the speaker? I'll
Go
take
ahead
that
and
as,
stop sharing the PowerPoint, and I think the speaker will be
no,
full
it's
screen.
not going to do that. Okay.
There we go.
There it is.
Perfect.
So here's the a DC-8, and we're going to take the back panel out. I've already removed the screws and did the disconnect. But to show here, as soon as it gets itself zoomed in and happy, you have 2 locations for the actual cable connector. You have the passive mode, which is where it was by default, and you have your active mode that you can move it over to, which will give you the biamp connections. And what that is a connector, as you see here in the back of the speaker, and then 2 Molex connections on the board. And really all you do is just move that connector to where you want, push it in, have it snap on. You will need to remove a little tab to get it off. And then when that is actually connected, these 2 tabs, one or the other, will show you which mode you're in, just in case you're not sure where the speaker is by default. And that's really all is needed to get you into biamp mode. And then, of course, you could use the Euro connectors if you'd like, or the NL connectors and use all 4 wires, or just 2, depending on how you need it.
Can you go ahead
And
and snap that plug in so we can kind of see what that looks like in the hole there?
we don't give you a lot of wire here, so give me just a second. Get home. Okay. And so I plugged it in the lower one now, so now it's indicating there that you're in the biamp axis for it. I'm gonna put it back in here so you'll be able to see too if the camera will show you, but it actually shows
Yeah, it sure does.
it's marked there.
Cool.
Okay. So back to view of me now, and we'll go back into the good old PowerPoint to move on to some other stuff. And that's biamp. And as you can see, we give you the pinouts. The 1 plus and minus would be for your HF, and the 2 plus and minus would be for your LF, depending on which connector you wire. All right. So moving to our CA line, we have these are the coax speakers, and this is just a quick screenshot of how you would change that in Q-SYS. So by default, in the property section, by clicking on the speaker block, you would be in passive mode. That's the default. And that would require just 1 amplifier connection. To do the 2-way mode in the software, you would still select the box, switch the drop-down mode to 2-way, and you'd have your 2 connections, your HF and your LF connection to it. And this will be showing you in Q-SYS just how that is done. So let's drop out of the PowerPoint here and do this together in an application. So are we seeing my screen still or not? We are, aren't we? Dan, are we
But
seeing the?
you're good to go. Yep.
Okay, good. Thanks. It's hard for me to tell what's being shown. So in the default application, you have your amplifier and your single wire connection to a speaker block as you would normally do. But by clicking on that speaker block, you now have all of these different options. In the passive mode is by default set. You would just click the drop down and switch to two-way if you didn't want passive. And we're going to build that here. So we'll take in an amplifier module and another CA speaker block. And this one's already been set to two-way, but I will switch it just so we can see it goes to passive. You lose one of those connectors. And when you go to default, two-way, you get the second connector. And by hovering over it, that's the HF connection and the LF connection. You would then need 2 amp channels to feed it. You may ask, what about crossovers or anything up front? You would not need any of that. You would just wire the same exact signal to the amplifier channels. All of that crossover and filtering connection done, with Q-SYS via the speaker block. So that is kind of the beauty of the Q-SYS with the speaker blocks is everything crossover wise, voicing wise, tailoring is done for the speaker. We can use the CA block here just to say maybe you weren't using the Q-SYS amplifiers. I don't know why you wouldn't, but for some reason maybe you weren't, or using one of our SPAs or something for one of the smaller CA boxes. Over here in the properties, you have inline processing. It's default to no, but if you make it yes, your block will change to 2 circles, which then it would live in the front of the amplifier connection, and or this would be a line out connector for Q-SYS. This would give you all of the voicing properties that we do, the EQ, everything like that. The only thing we don't give you is limiting this way. Uh, because we do not know what the amplifier is at that point. With the connection via the normal connection in Q-SYS with the Q-SYS amplifier, this block now knows what power this channel can provide. So then it tells the amplifier, well, the HF can only take so much voltage. As soon as you get to that voltage, start limiting and save the speaker. So another benefit to the system being, a Q-SYS system. All right. So now we're going to go back to this PowerPoint and move on to the directivity control speakers, or the DC models. And the DC models are done very, very similar to the CAs, but we want to go through all of it with everybody. So again, you have your speaker block with your signal feed to it. One wire connection's passive by default. And you would switch it to two-way if you wanted a two-way. And then again, the same wiring of the same exact signal to the amplifier channels would allow, because the amplifier would actually know that it's being put into crossover mode. The processing happens in the amplifier, to be honest with you. The block just gives it all the data. So we will hop back into Q-SYS here, and we'll work on the DC blocks now. So we're here with the PLDC. We're down here with our DC blocks, and we'll grab us an amplifier again, let the lines line up. And we're going to do the DC 12 block just as our block to use. And we're going to put it back into passive mode. And that would be how it would be connected, along with a signal connection to the A channel to feed it. And if we wanted to do biamp mode, sure why my biamp amplifier is missing, but what we'll do here is you down and bring in, we'll just bring this block back down. And instead of being in passive mode, we will now be in two-way mode. And very much like the CA, you would feed your 2 signals. A few other settings here in the properties that you need to work with any of the directivity control is, have you changed your default horn pattern? By default, we are at 90 by 50, but with the DC line, we actually have adjustable horn flares, as you may have seen. And these horn flares can be configured in both horizontal and vertical or asymmetrical patterning. And you pick the horn pattern that you have, which means we voiced it for those horn patterns. These first three you see are what we call our voicing. It's the tailored voice that our engineers came up with, that we believe the box sounds the way we like to sell it to you. But if you really were looking to flatten and start with a basically a flat output, you have the same options to pick flat. And what that would do would basically put the speaker's output to be as flat as possible to start with. And then at that point, you could tailor the EQ in the room as needed. Okay. The other piece that's different, if some of you have looked in the older versions of software, maybe you're not up to 10.0.1, is you would see a setting for your high pass filter here, yes or no. The team has actually moved that in this version to an actively adjustable high pass filter here. So let me emulate really quickly. And by default, we're running full range, but you have the options to pick the 80 hertz, the 100 hertz, or 125 hertz high pass, which is done in the FIR filtering. So all phase coherent filtering is done. And this is adjustable via control pin. So you could change this depending on needs of the room or changes of use of subwoofers or not. So you would just expose the control pin and feed it by those verbiage, uh, 80 hertz, 125 hertz, 100 hertz. And that's where you adjust that live. So during live function, you can actually change that without needing to go offline and switch it and then recompile and push it back in. So that's a nice feature with the DC line. All right.
Got a question here from Dustin. It says, I saw that the CA also has a contour property. How does
Yes.
that affect this series?
The contour for the CA is the same as the flat or not flat. So by default, your contour is our voicing, and if you'd like to change it to flat, you can.
Cool.
The reason that
Awesome.
we only have a contour in this speaker and not all the options of the horns is because you have one horn set for the CA. You do not get
Right.
to change those. All right,
Cool.
let's go back to good old PowerPoint here. And we'll move on to the line arrays, which is where many of these properties is where we're starting to see that needs to be worked with. In your passive mode, again, it's default to passive as you see for the properties. One wire connection to a line array. This says it has one box. The angles don't really matter with one box. We're going to get to that in a little bit. And then if you were to do two-way, basically the same as you've done with the DC boxes or the CA boxes. So ultimately, it's the same setup that you would do for biamp or passive. Engineering has told us that you're going to get approximately 2 to 3 dB more output in biamp mode. Um, so if you're pushing the performance level of your system, you may want to look at that. It does, require extra amp channels, which may or may not be required or not for that small amount of adjustment and power output. So we're in the LA, and this is where we really need to kind of focus on in the setup of the configuration because it's not obvious. And if you haven't worked with Q-SYS in the past line arrays, you would not know this is here unless we told you. Stop jumping around PowerPoint. So when you have a line array that is powered in more than one segment, as we call it, and that would be a section of amplifier channels and a section of amplifier channels. And how do you know you need that? Well, if you've been in your ease focus or your ease and you've turned down or up a section of boxes in the mapping, You've now decided that the first four boxes are on an amp, and then these bottom three boxes need their own amplifier channel so that you can adjust that level. These are passive boxes. So this what gives you the two segments. And this is where we found people have done some odd stuff with the segments because they're not sure what to do with it. And basically you define the box count total of the total full array, the splay or total angles of all your boxes. So, if this was 1 degree, 2 degree, 3 degree, 4 degree, 5 degree, you add all this up, you put that number in, and then you define the number of segments or how many, amplifier connections you need. And it's telling it that all of these boxes are stacked together so it knows to filter and balance the sound because all the drivers are lined up together. And I'm going to hop over to back to Q-SYS again here, and we're going to do this together so that it's a little helpful here. Let's get down here to LA. And so our LA setup for standard single feed passive, and I'm just going to use in the LA12 box. It could be the 8. It makes really no difference. You would feed just one. It looks like the box got left from the last webinar in. Says it's in. I know what I got. We need passive. We're going to go back to one segment here. And this is what you would expect to see for running it in its normal passive mode. But if you had that two segment setup and you weren't sure what to do with this, you may think that this is the way to do it. Put another speaker block in and then feed the next section of speakers this way. Makes sense, but the issue with this is that this block of processing, and you telling it it's just one set of four speakers or whatever it was, it can't determine what to do with the processing. And I'm actually jumping ahead a little bit here, so let's not do that. Let's back up just a small amount and do the biamp section of this because that's what we've been doing. And I jumped ahead. So excited to get ahead. And then we would make this box 2A. And again, very similar to all of the LA boxes or PL series that you would do in the properties for 2A application. But down here, we got all that information added, so we will move down to where we were talking about before. And we have LA box, and we got an amplifier here. In this box, I'm going to go ahead back to passive because it's a little easier to see. And so with this set that we had here before, we actually have those two segments. And like I said, you would think that this might be the way to do it because you have your upper segment and your lower segment. And then you would tell this, I have four boxes, whatever the angle ends up being of those four boxes. And then you would go here and say, I have three boxes. This would unfortunately be incorrect in the way Q-SYS voices the arrays because you actually have seven boxes stacked together. So you're getting a complement of seven high frequency drivers, seven LF drivers, and they are coupling because they're within a quarter wavelength joined in a line array or a curvular array. So this voicing setup does not understand that there's more than three boxes or more than four boxes. So the correct way to do this would be to tell this block we have a total of seven boxes. I believe it was 27 degrees. Come here, you. 27 degrees total splay. And that was the angles added up between the changes in the array. Whatever you've done for down angle does not count. It's the separation of the drivers is your total splay. And then you would tell it you have two segments. And then that gives you that extra connection point to run those other boxes. And when you wire them in the field, you would wire the 4 boxes and the 3 boxes. So then that would give you a place to adjust level for each of the segments that you need to balance them. You have an overall gain, and then you have the gain in the amp channel to adjust that 3 dB down that you had that you needed in your mapping to get correct. So again, this is the big part here is we're using array correction, yes. So we're filtering this, and you need to know the total number of boxes, the total angle break between the boxes, and then how many segments you're actually powering so that it knows they're all stacked together. And then you would get the expected response out of your speakers. The other way that we did it, kind of not under no understanding the 3 and the 4 boxes, is you would end up with a very unwanted output, and you would find yourself doing lots of room EQ to try to balance the system in because it thinks it's a little small array and a little bit larger array instead of one tall array. And hopefully that's understood now so that we know how to do this properly out in the field. And let's
Right.
move. Yes.
I have a question over here from Michael. It says, do we assume segment one is the top segment? Does it,
It
does the
makes no
block
difference
assume that?
at all. It makes no difference at all, even though assumption, yes, that's the way you would think in your wiring, but it could be wired upside down. You would just need to know if you're making any level changes, which one you're following.
Okay. Because it's just
It's really going to depend
it's a
on how
big
you
bunch of big
feel.
dumb boxes that are shooting sound and
Yes, but if
how
you
we set them.
wired your 3 boxes to this amp channel at the bottom and you wired your 4 boxes to this amp channel, you would need to know which amp channel to adjust that 3 dB on.
Okay. So other than that, cool.
Yeah, so I would follow the word assume and do what we know is linear. We go from top to bottom of a page. You know,
And for the guy that comes behind you that may
it
not
helps a
know that.
lot. Good labeling helps.
Yeah.
Those types of things. But again, the signal feed would be the exact same signal.
Yeah. Cool.
All right. So we have these subwoofers, and we are allowed to do some cool things with the subwoofers. So let me switch back over to the PowerPoint here, and we'll just do a quick look at that. Come here, you get rid of that side. And so with the PL line of subwoofers, the 15 and the 18-inch version, we allow you to set them up in a cardioid pattern via Q-SYS. And so we can do multiple different, oh, you PowerPoint. You can do a back-to-back cardioid where this is firing this way and this is firing forward. You can do what's probably more generally used as a stack like this. And this is still considered a stack. It's just laying on its side. But you have one driver forward, one driver back. What in oop, why did it jump ahead like that? One driver firing forward, one driver firing backwards in a vertical stack or a horizontal stack. It doesn't make any difference. It's still considered a stack. This would technically be considered front to back, um, as we call it back to back. When you get over to doing multiple drivers, one thing I will tell you is we've voiced this and powered this so that you don't notice a major loss in energy out the front, even though you are subtracting about 15 dB off the back. The voicing and development engineering did their best to keep that as smooth as they could. Generally, people have found that they need twice as many drivers forward as they need back to keep the LF in the room. Hence the images you see on the side over here, where you got 2 forward and one back, 2 forward this way with just one kind of hanging behind it. This would be some custom rigging or flying each box individually. The subs do fly on the array frame. So you could just have array frames to pick these, or if you're doing the 15, they actually have the eye bolts to connect. And you would pass the cable through the box when you're doing this. So your connection here, you could then pass the audio through to get to there. Come here, you stop bumping forward. Good old PowerPoint, and my mouse is jumping forward really quickly. But that's the options that we offer. So let's look in Q-SYS now and see how we can set these up. Come here, you. There you are.
I think that's cool how we have the fake grill on there for if you're
And
stacking them and you don't want it to look weird because sometimes aesthetics is a thing there. So that
well, thanks
fake grill is cool.
for doing that. Yeah, it is a part number, but you can reorder another front grill, and it will fit right in the back of the box, so it looks as if it's the front of the box.
Fake
Um,
grill.
so it's just a replacement grill, so you can do that. However you want to. You will need to put a connector, access through the backside or whatever. If you certainly wanted your boxes sealed up because they're going to be out under an overhang in the outdoors, you would want grills on both sides to keep out any critters that can get into ports and things like that. So you definitely want to cover up your ports so that you don't get bird's nest built in them for sure. But for cardioid setups, kind of the same thing here. We bring in us an amplifier. And the amplifier suggestions are part of the manual of the box, but generally it's the AK4 and one channel will suggest to drive up to four of the LA boxes. You can certainly do less. Pushing more is really not suggested as our application, but you guys can do some other things if you like.
While you're talking about amplifiers, I think it's important to also go for the sub here. We're recommending the 8K4s, but also going all the way back to the CA series. None of these, the CA, the DC, or the LA, do we recommend any of our 8-channel amplifiers. There's a lot of DSP that gets offloaded to those amplifiers, is what the speaker development team has told me. So we don't recommend that. So, but on like the CA 5, 6, and 8s, you could certainly use the 2K4. And then for the 15, you'll want to use the 4K4. Looking at the DC series, the DC 24, 26, and the 28, those are okay to use the 2K4 amps. But when you get to the 12, we recommend that you use the 4K4. And the line array, we're recommending the 4K4 or the 8K4. So just wanted to kind of throw that in there as you mentioned amplifiers. So because it
Yeah,
is a little different. Because I did it for designing the experience center, and I'm like, I threw 8-channel amps in, and they're like, eh, So just a nuance that you should be aware of.
yeah, perfect. Thanks, Dan. So with a general omnidirectional sub connection, as you notice in the properties were selected here, the sub is set to Omni. That means you just have your front firing 18 sub as if it's stacked on the floor or flown or whatever. This is how it would be. If you had a couple of those, it would be the same thing. You would just, either run them in parallel on channels or we suggest them their own connection to an amplifier. We have had it set up where two channels of an amplifier can run a sub, depends on how hard you really want to push them. But this would be your kind of your Omni setup. You would just have a block per sub. When you go to the cardioid, we come here to mode, switch it to either cardioid back, which would be one of those back-to-back setups, or one behind would be this option, or stack. They basically do the same thing other than they know what delay times to put in and what to adjust for cardioid. So I'll just pick stack for now. Notice you get your two connectors. This is newer in the 10 version. If you have a little bit older version of software, you would not get the two connectors. You would actually have two separate blocks, and one would be set to both. One would be set to back, one would be set to front, and it would know what to do with it. But again, you would just take the same signal connection to these guys, and it knows that that's the front one and that's the rear one. If you saw one of those ones where it had two front or one rear and you weren't sure how to make it work with this, you would then go back to another single block, say it's stacked, and maybe it's the other front speaker. And that's how you would run it so that you get the actual proper tailored voicing to be in the front. So you'd have two fronts and one rear. And that's pretty much how these things go together. Let's see here. Any more wiring pieces in here? What did we pop in this grandeur PowerPoint? I think we're going to get the thank you part. So I guess
Yeah.
we're at questions now. Welcome any that you have. Hopefully these little bits of time offered some help in the future. As Q-SYS and using speakers. The whole PL and DC, really the whole PL line is very new to the company, which gives us lots of tools now that we have. And before, if you haven't been doing a lot of sound system development with Q-SYS, you just put a speaker block or a generic block behind it, and
I was just popping in. I was gonna let you finish.
there's just that's we just put a generic block for random ceiling speakers, or we would do our ceiling speaker blocks, which didn't have a lot of changes to them. You put them in, you got your auto voicing put in, and you were off and running. And you really need to use the properties for this line of speakers, because the Q-SYS engine does most of your work for you. If you tune in the proper angles, the right segments, number of speakers, and all that, you will be in a really good place at the very beginning, no matter where you're at. And then really all you're working with is the room acoustics. You can do a little bit of massaging on that. If you notice the array seems a little, a little dull, maybe not quite bright enough, you can say it has maybe one more angle degree in it. So if you had 27, make it 28. What that'll do is just push a little more high frequency in it. You can certainly do it in reverse if you feel like it's a little bright to start with, or smart showing you a lot of energy in the high end, and you can hear it. You can certainly take a degree out. That will help a little bit, or you can do some tailoring EQ for the space, because it could be the environment that's causing that. But all in all, it will get it really close. And again, you have those options to go to flat also, which should make it everything just as even as possible.
I have a question on that. So, are you saying when you change the degree, would you actually change the line array degree or just the properties to
The
try to give it
properties. Your
just the
array is
properties?
already
Cool.
in the air. You've told it these numbers, and
They're
you're
all the
listening.
rigging guys have left.
Yeah, you're listening. Well, I mean, the only time you would need to change the rigging is if you've walked the space and you've realized that you weren't quite covering what you thought you were covering, because you ended up either a foot high or a foot low,
Right.
1 foot forward, 1 foot back from what the modeling might have shown. I can tell you the ease modeling is pretty darn spot on. If you've seen our the Dallas UT Dallas theater web, little cut of the venue, the practical application that we put together for that, the mapping of that, and literally what we measured in the field was within like a dB or two front to back. It was spot on. So the ease data for these products are very, very good.
Michael has another question here. Deploying an array in a few months, if we want assistance to make sure things are correct, who would be best to talk with? I would say start with your regional application engineer, and if you don't know who that is, well, we can try to reach out to. You should be able to find out who that is. So look for your area or regional folks. But you could always, hit up support, and they can try to get you to somebody as well too. And Trip may be available. He's one of our experts on that as well too.
But yeah,
So.
I mean, that's what I would say too. As your regional application engineer, we're all trained on this, so we can apply it correctly. But for some reason, they're busy, traveling, on vacation. If you have my email address, you're more than welcome to send it to me or anybody. I mean, of course, the sales managers in the area will get somebody to help you quickly.
Yeah.
But I would suggest letting us, give us a few days prior. You don't want to do it the day you've already
Yeah,
got it in the
yeah.
air.
I'm going there to. I just
Yeah.
got here and I need some help. Like, yeah, hit us up a week
Yeah.
before or so. Yeah.
Just to make sure, and we'll look over your file and make sure it looks right with the parameters. Again, we would assume that you would provide either our application design that may have been done from our team, or one that you did yourself, just so we know what you're applying to also.
One other thing that I just wanted to pop in, and I shared prematurely earlier there, is when we talk about the DC series. If you're not familiar, um, the when we were talking about configurable horns, it's really cool. This is just a graphic and an animation of it. But this is one of the great things about that is you can put 235-degree segments and get a 70-degree. You can get a 60 and a 45, so you can kind of for instance, one of the applications I've used here, they're pretty close to the outside walls, so we put a really narrow on that side because we don't really need to splash that side. So really great configurable that way. And you can do it without having to like pull the whole driver out and everything like that. So
Yeah,
just
I was going to
wanted
add that
everyone to
too.
kind of see a visual of that one for sure. So
And they're fully rotatable, so if your speaker does end up horizontal, you just rotate the horn to match your
yep.
pattern. It's a,
Yep.
you're building the flares and they fit into a basket. And so you never have to touch the compression driver or any of that weight. It's just the simple screws around the grill and the four screws that hold it together. And we do ship you with all of the flares. So
Yep.
inside of the carton, you get all the options. They're in there. You'll probably only use a couple of them. May keep a few of them around just in case. Otherwise, after a while, if you know your patterns are all working good, then I guess they
Well,
can.
my pattern as a serial hoarder would tell me that I'll have a box of 20 flares that'll sit around for 2 years before I finally throw them away.
It could happen, and we've had some people ask, why do we put all that plastic in the box? But the idea of you being on site and panicking because something didn't quite come out right, somebody changed something, added a wall, moved a wall, whatever it is, and then having to reach out to your sales manager, order a flare or get one and all that. We just figured it was easier to just put them in the packaging. And I
Yep,
guess if you don't use
absolutely.
them, they can just go with the packaging wherever packaging goes.
Cool. Well, any other questions we've got from anybody there? Feel free to drop it in. Let me just kind of go up and see what we've got teed up
Well,
for other deep dives coming up.
and I'll ask this while you're doing that. Anybody that's watching this can chat in the thing. Did this help you understand how to do this? I mean, we're really hoping that it did, so that you didn't get caught with some of these, little gotchas and not understand how the properties work.
Bring my schedule up. Seems like Zoom's using all my processing power. So, what we do have coming up October 7th, behind the scenes of the Q-SYS escape room from the 2025 Infocom and ISE. So, if you want to see how that was done, it's written all in block controller. So, Nate McCarrick is actually going to be doing that one with Steve McCary. Best practices in gain structure and AEC. Great presentation. We see it a lot. That one's always good. And Q-SYS UCI tools and advanced CSS techniques. So if you tuned in at the beginning of September for how to build and use CSS templates, this is a great follow-up to that. If you didn't catch that one, you could certainly sign up for it. We'll be running it again later on the first part, but you could still tune into the second part as well too. So just want everybody to kind of know those are out there. And I know the speaker audience may not be the same audience for doing the other, but we're all the Q-SYS family. So Eric Marshall says this was awesome. Thank you. So there you go.
Thanks,
There's
Eric.
your feedback. So um, awesome. Well, we really appreciate the investment of time, everybody. And Trip, thanks again. I was waiting for you to bring some happy speakers out. You're kind of the Bob Ross of speaker design there, just nice and even keeled. You weren't yelling at me about anything. That I
Oh
can't
no,
guarantee that on that one with Nate. He's going to probably be a little more amplified, but I like it. It was good. So
that's what makes Nate Nate. He is he
exactly
is
right,
an
and that's what makes
entertainer.
Trip. So awesome. Thanks for the presentation. Very helpful, says Todd Meyer. So yeah, there we go.
No, good. I'm glad it helped out.
Yep. Well, everybody have a great day, and we'll see you on the next deep dive. Thanks again, Trip. We appreciate the help.
Bye,
All
everyone.
right.
Thank
See ya.